Hello again, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and thank you for listening in to a brand new episode of Deeply Rooted.
Deeply rooted in God's word. Deeply rooted in God's word.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deeply Rooted. So glad you could join us. We're really excited about the content today. But as always, make sure you check us out on our YouTube channel. You can go on there and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on there. Leave us a review. That helps us out as well. And be sure to go on over, thanks to our friends at Pod Point Ministries. And you can also subscribe to our Apple Podcasts, and that'll update every single time if you subscribe there for that. So we're excited about those two platforms. And if you want to check us out even more, be sure to check us out on our Facebook page. You can follow us on there, and you can get a little more information on our website. That's jeremiahreiner.com. You'll find all of our blog posts on there, our previous episodes. You can also check out our ministry schedule, and some exciting things coming up is there as well as we begin to kind of open back up and enter into different phases and so forth and so on. So a lot of ministry opportunities coming up, and we've got a really good one here today. I'm excited about this content. It just happened to work out. We actually ran a poll months ago about this topic, and it won out, but because of the issues with COVID and some of the separations that we've had being able to communicate with different people, we were actually finally able to get it going today. So I'm really excited. I got a great friend on the podcast today, and we're going to be talking about church safety and security with my good buddy Ryan Vanover. Ryan is currently an officer with the Wise County Sheriff's Department, Wise County, Virginia. He's a graduate of UVA-Wise, so big alumni there for us. He's married to his lovely wife, Brittany, and they're the proud parents of their son, Levi. Ryan and Brittany are both members at Glay Morgan Chapel. They serve there very faithfully for the Lord in this community for Wise County for many years. So, Ryan, thanks so much for being on, buddy.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Well, first question right off the bat, why in the world did you get into law enforcement?
You know, that's a good question I can ask myself today. Why did I get into this job of law enforcement and career? My dad worked with the Wise County Sheriff's Office for 28 years, and he served 3 years as a military police officer in the United States Army. So it's definitely in my background. I grew up in it. I was always more afraid of my dad than I was a judge. Because my dad being a police officer, we walk the line. And we try to carry ourselves as a role model, as an example, and, do what's right. And so being in that environment and living in that, I began to have a passion for it as well. And I believe it was a calling from the Lord to get into that. So it's probably around my second year of college, I guess, my sophomore year. I was studying to be a gym teacher. I planned on teaching and coaching, and then it changed to law enforcement. So I've carried through with that, and I enjoy every minute of it. It's definitely got its issues and struggles and battles, but I believe this is where God has me. So I'm keep going, keep fighting the fight.
Well, we appreciate your service, buddy. When you got out of college, explain to everybody where you received all of your education and training for law enforcement.
So went to the college for 4 years at UVA-Wise, got my bachelor's degree, and what the closest thing that they had for criminal justice is called administration of justice. Then I was picked up and hired by the sheriff's office. And so from there, you have right at a year, unless it's extended by an organization called DCJS, Department of Criminal Justice Services, which regulates criteria, training, curriculum. So you have a year there to get actually certified as a law enforcement officer. So our closest law enforcement academy is in Bristol, Virginia. And so I spent 15 weeks there Monday through Friday in Bristol, staying in our barracks, doing the training. and started in July of 2010 and ended in November of 2010. So for 15 weeks, every day, learning the laws and procedures and constitutional amendments, learning about people's rights and how to effectively do this job to help people, to help the community, and to build trust with the community.
Now, you're an old football player, so you played high school and college. Which training did you think was harder, college football or military police academy?
I would say it's two different categories. I would probably sector them out. The football was more challenging physically. Law enforcement was more challenging academically. Mm-hmm. You have to score 100% on each test that you take, and you take a test generally once a week, and you have 3 chances at those tests. So you take a test that's got 100 questions on it. You have to answer every single question right, and you get 3 chances. So there's definitely a lot of stress and pressure that I put on myself because having grown up, I wanted to make my father proud. But at the same time, I'm coming into a department, the same department my father's in. So I'm stepping into big shoes,
right,
so to say. So I wanted to make sure that I was earning the position, and I wanted to do it right, do it justice. So there was a lot of pressure academically. Physically, I wasn't that worried about it. But academically, man, it was a trying time. But I got through it.
Now, how many years is this in law enforcement for you? June
1st of this year, so 2 weeks ago, I just started year 10.
Okay. Well, congratulations, man.
Yeah. It's been a long road, but it's been a good one.
What role are you currently in right now at Wise County Sheriff's Department?
So I work the patrol division. I'm a sergeant in the patrol, and I get to work with a canine. So a canine is a tool that we are able to use because dogs can see, they can smell, and they can hear better. So we use them, and I get to play that role in the department that I get to bring my partner with me every single day, and he goes home with me.
And what's his name?
He's always wagging his tail whenever I open his door.
What's the dog's name?
Roan. Roane. Roan.
I love it.
Yeah, he'll be 4 in August, and we got him in February of 2018, and he's got several arrests under his belt. And I've always believed that because we've had him there, it's turned out safer.
Sure. Now, as a longtime follower of the Lord, and this is really where you and I became friends a long time ago through college and ministry, and we've been close ever since, did you ever think there would be a day where church security and safety would be such a common topic and an issue that churches have to deal with?
Sadly, no. I guess I was pretty naive to it, in denial. Even in law enforcement, man, we see people acting out of anger, people acting out of a lot of emotion.
Right.
And we get to see the good and the bad in law enforcement. But being a person of faith who I've been raised in church, I never really thought that evil would necessarily come through our front doors of the church, so to say. I think that's the best example. So, no, I never thought that. I figured it would be one of the things of persecution, maybe in your individual life, trying to live for the Lord, persecution personally, but not as a church congregation. I never thought of it until, within the last several years, it has really opened my eyes to, man, there is a danger in this.
We did some research here, and I shared this with you before we got going on this. And I want to read this to our audience just to kind of catch everybody up to speed, because I do think, and I would agree with you on that, over the last couple of years, I think eyes have been open to something that I think most of us would have been a little aloof to, or at least just kind of put that as an outlier, so to speak, especially here, and I hate to be this way, but kind of in the Bible Belt, I guess I want to say we've been a little sheltered to some of that. But according to a January 2020 article by Christianity Today, they're in some massive research with the help of Lifeway and some different other organizations. I just want to kind of read off some things here for people to kind of really catch us up, like I said, to speed here. And since 2000, there's been at least 19 fatal shootings that have taken place in Christian churches. Gunmen have also taken the lives in religious sites such as synagogues and Sikh temples and Amish schools. So different religious organizations are not immune from this. Right now, there's around 80% of Protestant churches saying that their church has some type of security measure in place at their worship gatherings. 28% of those churches say they have radio communication among security personnel. 45% of pastors say their security team's measures include having armed members. 51% of those pastors say they have uniformed police officers or some type of armed security personnel on site during worship hours. 3% of churches say they have metal detectors at their entrances to screen for weapons. 18% of pastors surveyed in this research say they have taken no precautions pertaining to this issue, and 72% of churchgoers surveyed say they feel safer with security and police protection at church, while 20% say they weren't sure, and 18% said that they feel less safe. And since this research has come out, just a little note here, in January later on of 2020, President Trump actually signed new legislation which authorized around $375 million in federal grant money to help all houses of worship and other nonprofits improve their defense and strategies against violence. So whether or not you're paying attention to it, the government is, and people at large and organizations and institutions and many pastors are paying attention to it. So real simple question, right? I mean, what in the world comes to mind when you hear all those statistics?
I would say the first thing that I think of is how sad.
Right.
How sad it is for somebody to walk into a place that, I'm going to use the word vulnerable, to say people come into a place of worship, and like you mentioned, it's just not Christianity, it's other religious organizations that are being affected by this as well. People coming together to share a common faith, and some evil comes in to destroy that. It's very saddening to me that people would take advantage of people like that. That you've got kids and families there that are trying to do better and to learn more about whatever religious sector that they're in, and people are preying on that. So I would say that is the first thing that comes to my mind, is how sad that is. The second thing I would say is it's really eye-opening of how evil our world is. When you start thinking about, and I'm a part of the Christian faith, so we'll talk about it. And I'm not saying anything negative about the other religious organizations or beliefs. I'm just talking about mine. As a Christian and as a follower of Jesus Christ, we hear about evil, we know about evil, but now we're starting to see evil manifest more close to home.
Right.
That you could be so used to going into a church 1,000 times, but the 1,001st first time is when somebody comes in and wants to do harm to people that are just sitting there worshiping God, hearing the message, trying to come together to build strength from each other and to learn more about the Lord. Somebody walks in with a weapon, whether it's to steal the money, whether it's out of hatred, any type of motivation there that they would want to do evil we see that coming firsthand in a place that we're used to being safe.
Sure.
You know, that it's really, really eye-opening and sad.
Now, years ago, I was really probably introduced to this more than anything that I can remember at your all's church. Actually, I remember you invited me to a meeting one night, and there were representatives from what felt like 20 to 30 different churches. I mean, there was well over 100, maybe 200 people there at your all's congregation that evening. Side note, that was probably the best coffee punch I've ever had, and I want to thank Ryan for getting me involved with coffee punch. But getting back to the topic here, I was shocked at how much detail that you all used. A lot of your officers and guys that you work with are up there, and I just thought they did a tremendous job. And that opened my eyes really quickly to, hey, this is out there, and this is not far from home. You may think it is, but this is right in your backyard. And like you said, who knows when that day, that 1001 or whatever the number may be, you walk in and life's just different after that. It'll never be the same. But let's go ahead and get into the nuts and bolts of it here. Explain, and we'll walk through some of this in detail, explain the ideal plan or plans, I guess, that you would recommend as a law enforcement officer to local churches about what they should do, or at least start to do, to look into this issue.
So if you're trying to get into the church safety and security, I would say, and this is my opinion on this, being a law enforcement officer, I would say try to come up with a plan. A plan is what you go to when things get stressful. There are so many studies out there that about cognitive reasoning and feeling the shell shock, if you will, of something bad, something tragic happens. So you lose train of thought, you lose motor skills.
Right.
You can't breathe right, you can't see right, tunnel vision happening. You start losing finger dexterity. So many things can start happening when a shocking event happens. Let's say, for instance, you get in a car wreck and you just have no idea what just happened because you're experiencing shock. Maybe after a few hours, minutes, whatever, maybe a day or two, things will start to come back to you. But that is an initial complication from shock. So you start losing things that are normally there, but eventually over time they come back. So I would start with a plan. The plan is what you go to whenever that tragic trauma or disaster happens. And if you have a plan, you have a way. So if I can detail that plan, and the more I can think and plan on the plan, if you get what I'm saying, if I can go through that in my mind and know exactly where I'm supposed to be, then that is what I will do when that tragedy occurs. It may not be to the T, but it will be pretty close to what I thought about. And that's what we do in law enforcement is we train. We train in high stressful situations in order to overcome the shock of the tragedy.
Right.
So if something happens, heaven forbid, and we don't want it to happen, but if it does, hopefully our training kicks in gets us through the tragic event. So I would always start with a plan. Your pastor should be on board with that plan. The preacher, your elders, deacons, the board, however you refer to your organization's leadership, should be on board with that plan. And that plan doesn't necessarily have to be a guy or a girl walks into the church with a gun. It could be a vehicle crashes into the parking lot and wipes out 4 vehicles. That is a tragic event.
Sure.
To where now you've got the road blocked, or let's say the vehicle runs through your church. There is a oil spill that happens. There is someone comes in that is a sex offender who prays after children. I mean, it could be violent or it could be just hazardous. Someone has a heart attack in your congregation. What do you do?
Right.
Are there nurses in your congregation? Is there a doctor in your congregation? Is there accessibility to phones? Are you going to church somewhere that has no phone service? So do you have a landline? There's all kinds of things that could happen. And it doesn't have to be just violence that could happen. I mean, it could be just a natural disaster. You're sitting in church and a tornado comes through. What are you going to do? So having a plan, thinking outside of the box, and really digging into being detailed in that plan and getting everybody on board. That's where I would start.
Now, you mentioned some really good points there about the people that ought to be involved. Obviously, from the top down, you've got to have people on board with that plan. You mentioned, well, right off the bat, the pastors and the leadership of the church, whether they be elders, deacons, or a combination of both. And I thought you did a really good job of covering some other areas, such as medical personnel, actual law enforcement personnel, people that have training in certain types of life-saving scenarios. So it's really clear you need a all-hands-on-deck approach to this, and making sure that people are aware at any point in time your skills and talents and gifts, which I think me and you would agree, God has gifted people that, and they are what they are for a reason. Not everybody preaches, not everybody sings, not everybody leads children's church. And to sit there and think, well, so-and-so is just a pew sitter. Well, that's a really low view, I think, of the people of God. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, some people could be the difference maker in a calamity, in a catastrophe for that matter, or maybe, like you said, a heart attack, or God forbid, a car accident or something like that. So, right off the bat, definitely having a plan. A follow-up to that, I wanted to ask, is there anything specific that you would recommend churches purchasing that you think would be pretty ideal for many scenarios?
Yeah, I think something to purchase that comes to mind would be medical supplies. Mm-hmm. When you think of, and in my training as law enforcement, being part of the SWAT team, I've had the chance to go to North American Rescue, and I'm not plugging for them, but they're a great organization. They create a lot of medical supplies for law enforcement, EMT, fire departments, just first responders and doctors. They create a lot of stuff that comes from the military, that the military tries out. It's been tried and tested, and it works under battle, under they call it under fire care, under fire, but it's tactical combat casualty care, TCCC, and there's all kinds of variations about that. And one of the things that we picked up there, just as a law enforcement agency, there was me and another guy that went, was the amount of people that you may have to treat or assess and help during a tragedy. So let's say somebody is in a car wreck, or somebody gets stabbed, somebody gets shot. If it's anywhere near, or if it severs that femoral artery or any arteries that run through your body, you're looking at about a minute and a half before that person loses consciousness. And then right at around 3 minutes, they're going to die. So that is a severe case that can happen pretty easily if it's in the right place, and can happen really quickly. So that would be one of the things that I would recommend is medical supplies, tourniquets, bandages, stuff to where you could get in mass, to where you could store it in, let's say, the pastor's office and lock it up, or let's say a doctor, you have somebody that is a doctor that could get those supplies, or if your church wants to buy them, they could do that. So having that plan and the medical aspect of it, of okay, how many people do we have in our congregation? Well, we have, for instance, we have 150. Well, how many tourniquets do we have? Well, we have one. So we can only save one person. Now you're diving into, well, who is that one person that we're going to save if there's 20 of us shot? And that is a decision that none of us want to have to make, because you've got kids and you've got family, and if anybody is chosen over my son or my daughter or this and that, then there becomes a fight that nobody wants to deal with and shouldn't have to. But if we can hold those things and be prepared in our planning stage of medical supplies, well, now maybe we have 50 tourniquets. So it's just something to think about. I can't sit here and say that every church should do this, and if you have this number of members of congregation, then you should have this many tourniquets or this many bandages. But I think there needs to be some type of number that you come into as a church, as your board, as your pastor, as leadership in your church, to where you feel comfortable about taking care of majority, if not all, of your congregation. Now, can you afford that financially? I don't know. That's your decision, but I would say that plan of the medical part of it is very, very key in your planning stage.
Would you recommend, if affordable, or even if they're thinking of it, my thought, I guess, would be, could you not afford to do this, but would you recommend security cameras?
I don't think that security cameras would hurt. There's all kinds of different technology out there today. There's camera systems that will send you text messages to your phone. That, if a deer walks by in your backyard, or your dog does, or a rabbit, then you'll get a text message, or if somebody pulls up. Technology is gone so far to where I went on an alarm call a couple of weeks ago, and the guy was out of town, and I rang his doorbell, and I had a conversation through his doorbell with him on his phone. And I said, "Hey, man, sheriff's office, I'm here. You got an alarm going off?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "Everything looks okay." And we had a conversation through his doorbell. So technology has definitely advanced when it comes to security technology out there. It's crazy to think. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it would hurt anything. Could it help anything? Absolutely. It could help peace of mind. I think a lot of people might feel safer if they had a security camera, especially at nighttime or whatever, or even parking lot lights. That's another thing that you could throw out there. That, if you're having a Sunday night service, Wednesday night service, and it's dark outside, it may people feel safer knowing that there's lights activated and it's not so dark. So yeah, I don't see how it could hurt, but I could see how it could help.
Yeah. You mentioned a second ago, you were talking about there's more than just, violent shootings that are out there that churches need to be aware of. And you hit on a few of those, talking about, child perversion, stuff like that, people coming in. Talk a little bit about the idea that you got to be on guard for more than just that active shooter.
So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things that can devastate us as a human being. You think of the worst would be, I could think of nothing worse than death. Total separation from my wife or my dad or my mom, a family member, a friend, my child. I mean, that is the ultimate sadness right there, is the loss of life. But there's also other things that can really, really grieve us to the point of, I would probably classify as of close to no return back to normalcy, meaning it hits us deep and it hits us hard, emotionally and physically, spiritually, mentally. It could be a tragic accident. Someone gets in a motor vehicle accident and they're left paralyzed. That's a hard event that life will never be normal, quote unquote normal, as it once was. And when you're talking about humanity and tragedies and disasters, there's all kinds of scenarios. People coming home and their houses are being robbed. Someone violates their own, what they feel is safe in their house, and somebody has broken that and has kicked their door in or climbed through a window and has stolen what is precious to them, and that is their belongings, whether it's a sentimental ring that their mother gave them, or a firearm their dad gave them, or a TV that they worked their life away for to come home and to relax, and they don't get that. They feel violated. So there's all kinds of things that can happen to us as a human population that can leave us devastated. It can really affect, quote unquote, our normal lives. So when you start putting that into a church setting, and you feel that should be a place of peace, that should be a place of rest, that we come together. And as the Bible says, in the Christian faith, we come together in one mind and one accord,
right,
to worship and to lift up the name of Jesus Christ. When that feels violated, and that feels like it has been trampled on and invaded by the enemy, I mean, that can mess with our quote unquote normal, what we should be doing and how we should be feeling in the house of God. So, and it doesn't have to be just the violence. Like I said, I mean, it could be a heart attack during the middle of the church service. For years and years and years, especially if that person is left in a state to where they don't recover 100%, or maybe they pass away, heaven forbid. That place will never be the same. There will be scars and mental images of brother such and such or sister such and such having a heart attack in the choir, or falling out while they're preaching the message, or falling out in the congregation. So, life in general, man, is tough. Life in general is hard. And that is the evil and the broken world that we live in, that we have fallen from God. Because of that, we have to now endure those pains. But thankfully, we have a hope. And
right.
That hope is Jesus Christ. So, man, there's just all kinds of things that could happen. And you try your best, and heaven forbid, me being a police officer, I don't want to see the bad stuff, man. That's not why I got into this job. I want to help people. I want to love people, and I want people to see Jesus Christ in me. That's my ultimate goal. So whenever I'm doing my normal job of out here in the police car, and I'm driving around in my uniform, man, I just want God to be glorified. And life's tough, life's difficult, but I have a hope, and I have somebody that carries me from call to call and day to day to help me make it through it. So, man, I think just getting in and realizing that there are things out there that can devastate us, and try to make a plan for it, try to brace ourselves for what could happen. And heaven forbid, we plan for the worst and it turns out great.
Right.
We've lost nothing.
Right.
But we don't plan and the bad happens, then we've lost everything.
Sure. Now, as time moves on and things change, obviously technology is going to change and information evolve. And so if we revisited this conversation 5 or 10 years from now, we would probably look back and say, well, we never saw that coming, or look how things have changed, in a good or a bad way necessarily. But how would you recommend churches right now seek out help in this area if they're considering improving their security measures? What should they do to reach out to somebody? So
if they're around our area, or even if they're not, I mean, they're more than welcome to call. But at the Wise County Sheriff's Office, we have a guy that has been trained in, I think they labeled it, and the training was called faith-based security. Mm-hmm. And so he is able to look at security measures and kind of see, okay, what can be tightened up, what's really good in the department or in the church building. He does it for businesses as well, because he's able to take the training that he has and just kind of look at it from an outside looking in type of thing. Okay, if I was a criminal, what would I do? And I'm just going to throw this out here. This is a for instance, just an example. So let's say you have a key, for instance, outside of your residence, and it's a hidden key, but it's on the front porch somewhere under the flower pot or under the mat.
Right.
He might come in and say, that's probably not a good place to have that. So he would be a guy that could look at an organization, a church, and could say, okay, you know, what's some things that you could tidy up on, you know. Is someone making sure that the doors are locked after everybody that you feel is comfortable coming into the church? Is there somebody there that, you know, can lock the doors and can stay available? And that's what we do at ours. You know, around 11:15, we lock the back doors, but there is someone who walks around, who stays near the doors to see if anybody else, you know, maybe somebody's running late or somebody wants to catch the service, and, you know, they don't get there on time right at 11, so he's able to let them in. But he's there to make sure nobody's messing around in the parking lot, to make sure nobody's trying to get in who shouldn't be in there, that's going to be doing harm. And the thing is, and that's the tricky part, a church, you never want to turn anybody away. And you know that as well as I do.
Right. You
know, you want people to come in and you want people to hear the good news of the gospel. And so as a church, as an organization, you know, the person that is doing the safety, so-called security, whatever term definition that you would put on that person, needs to be vetted to understand that, hey, man, we don't want to turn somebody away, but at some point, if they're doing something that doesn't need to be going on, if they're over here breaking into vehicles, they probably don't need to be there, you know, so they really need to be on top of their game and really need to be paying attention. So that's what I would say is contact your local departments, your police departments, your sheriff's offices, even state police. See if there's resources out there. Get online. See if there's any type of trainings that these churches have done, and take what's good and leave the bad. You know, if it doesn't work for your church, it doesn't work. But I firmly believe that there's something that you might be able to take away to help your congregation feel a little bit safer.
Yeah. Now, right before we get to our closing stuff, I want to ask you one final question here, and this is just more of I guess a reminder to everybody. You know, these are not like pie in the sky stories here, but and they're not just ideas and theories being thrown around, but this is real people living real lives, and these are real churches that you see this, and we ran over all the statistics there. Those are real individuals that God created, and he had a plan for their life, and he still does, and evil has rocked that. But do you have any personal story you could share with the audience here that deals in regard to like church security and safety?
You know, there's things that have happened in our church, and I'm not going to say that we've had anything bad because we haven't. I've not seen anything.
Sure.
But and thank God for that. I don't want it to happen.
Right.
I pray it doesn't happen. But if it does happen, I would hope that we are prepared and we at least have a plan to be safe about it. But I would say in personal stories, you know, I'm a law enforcement officer that I would guess, and this is a guess, I would say probably 95% of the congregation knows that I'm a police officer, that knows I'm a deputy sheriff at the sheriff's office. If they don't, they're probably new, and I probably don't know them. But I would say they know that I'm a law enforcement officer. And so we've had instances on Wednesday night near Awana when prevalent more kids are there,
Sure.
More than adults. And even on Sunday mornings when somebody's doing security and they send me a text message or they come up and get me and say, hey, can you step to the back for a minute? Now, it could be somebody that is in need of help financially and they just really don't know how to handle it, which I'm cool with. You know, if it's somebody that in law enforcement that I've seen take advantage of people, you know, that's where you let your pastor and your elders, deacons, board, whatever you call the leadership in your church, you let them know kind of, without going into much detail, you let them know, hey, man, you know, this might not be what he's claiming or she's claiming it to be, or it might be, you know, so you really got to be very good stewards of that. And I think the leadership and listening to the guidance of the Holy Spirit is the best way to go on those instances. I mean, my personal story, I gave a guy $20 one time, and this is not to toot my own horn, but I gave a guy $20 one time, and the next couple of weeks he was under arrest for possession of drugs. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, I could have been a little bit stern and not giving him the money, but at the same time, we took him to McDonald's and gave him something to eat. And I shared and prayed with him. So, I did my part of trying to be faithful, and I did my part of trying to be the good Samaritan. I hoped and I prayed that he didn't use that money to go out and to buy drugs. Of course, you never know, what people do with the kindness of your heart.
Right.
Trying to give them money, whether it's somebody sitting at a gas station or whatever that's begging for money. And I mean, you never know what they do with the $5-10 that they give you, or that you give them. I'm sorry, but my conscience was clear, and I was able to lay on my bed that night and know that, man, I prayed with him. I'm giving it to God, and even though I knew the man from law enforcement, I knew his name. And I could about guess what he was going to do with it. I still wanted to be faithful,
sure,
as a servant of the Most High God. And so stories of that nature, people coming in asking for help, people coming in just acting strange, and then I come back there and it's like, no, they're okay. It's always good to have law enforcement in your congregation that can kind of tell you, hey, man, it's okay. Just watch them, keep an eye, or I'll stand back here with you. And it lets you, your safety, security guy, girl, whatever, feel about themselves as well. And they're feeling a part of something.
Sure.
They're helping you out and you're helping them out. So it's teamwork. But yeah, man, that's basically the personal stories I have. It's nothing grand. I've not saved lives. I've not given CPR, hooked the AED to anybody, but I think being there and having at least a plan, a contingency plan that, hey, if something goes wrong, we're going to figure it out. And but I'm here to help. I think it's what makes our church so special.
Well, we hope that pattern continues, and we hope you guys always stay safe and sound like that. And I'm confident with guys like you on the scene there, that's probably going to continue. So, man, we appreciate you being on with us today. I know it's been kind of hectic. We're meeting over Zoom right now, and, we're sitting in all kinds of different places and doing what we can to make this happen. But I appreciate you taking time out, on a busy Sunday. You got some free time there, so it's good to talk with you. We're going to close it down right now. We'll be right back with some closing announcements, so you guys hang tight, and we'll be right back with you. Hey everybody, back with some closing announcements here. Again, thank you so much for joining us here on Deeply Rooted. This is episode 49, and we appreciate all your faithfulness and being a part of this ministry and trying to do what it is God's called us to do, and that's help people out as best we can, digging into the Word, diving into some topics that we think are pretty relevant for today, and just trying to be a blessing and a help and encouragement to people and educate people on some issues that we feel like are pertinent to the church and the body of Christ and individuals as servants of the Lord. And so today's a prime example of that. We thank our good friend Ryan Vanover for being on with us today and taking some time out of his busy schedule with law enforcement and educating us a little bit more on some issues that I know we may not want to talk about it, but it's one of those things like he was talking about. It's a hard subject, but it's a subject that we need to talk about. Better to be prepared than unprepared, because the consequences of being unprepared are so much more significant than what could be if we were prepared. So just want to remind you about a couple of things that he was saying there, talking about making sure you have a plan. Got to get things in place. Make sure you have leadership on board. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. Make sure you've got the right personnel involved. If need be, make some necessary purchases. Maybe it's something the church needs to meet about and discuss, and some things that he mentioned on there, medical equipment, a definite that you really want to make sure you're covered on. Maybe some extra lighting, particularly outside, and possibly some security camera and detail in that regard. And remember, we're not just talking about gun violence. It could be a lot of different things, sexual predators and so on and so forth, an actual disaster, an accident, a lot of things that he covered there that were really good that I think a lot of people tend to forget because it seems like the news is dominated more with the violent attacks, and certainly we're not making light of that, but on the overall, there's a lot of things that could be coming our way that we definitely need to be prepared for. And he made a great point there at the end. Reach out. There's all kinds of help out there. There's resources, local law enforcement. Bottom line, folks, and I'm not here saying this just because of what's going on, but these people are here to help. They swore an oath to protect and serve, and that's what they do. I've got a lot of great friends that are involved in law enforcement. I'd put them up against anybody in the whole wide world. They're great people. A lot of these people are men and women of God, so not only are they there to serve and protect, but they're there to serve the Lord Jesus Christ. And according to the Bible and in my book, that makes them a brother and a sister. And we ought to treat them the exact same way, whether in uniform or out of uniform. If they love the Lord, they're in the family of God. And God's put his stamp of approval on that, not Jeremiah Reiner, not Ryan Vanover. And so they ought to be treated as such, and we ought to hold them in that kind of regard. And we ought to pray for them and pray that they do a good job well, and pray that they come home safe and they get to go home to their families and raise good children and be productive members of society. They want to live a joyful life like anybody else. I want to live a joyful life like anybody else. And the way we do that is, like Ryan said, be prepared, know what's at stake, and at all costs try to provide a safe and secure environment for people so that they can worship the Lord, as he says, in spirit and truth, and that the gospel might be presented, which, as Ryan hit the nail on the head, that's our hope. It's Jesus Christ. It's not necessarily personnel and ideas and things written on paper and people in certain places, but real, genuine, life-altering hope is found in Jesus, and it always will be. So we appreciate all the things he said there for us. Really, really good information. Just wanted to throw a few more things out there. Ryan was asking, looking ahead there. They have a tremendous website, and they also run their Facebook Live there at Glay Morgan Chapel. So you can check out their services. I know their pastor very well, Pastor Greg Sargent, tremendous man of God. And Ryan actually mentioned he actually preached this morning there. So if you creep in on the right time, you might hear Ryan preach. So could be a good time for everybody. That way you'll be able to put a face with a name now, so that'd be really fun. But they do a tremendous ministry there in Wise County. So if you're in that area, you're looking for a church, you may be seeking out something right now, I know Glay Morgan Chapel would be a tremendous place for you to plant yourself and your family. They'd welcome you with open arms. And like I said, I can vouch for that personally. They do a great ministry there, and I know they take care of you real well. Looking ahead on the calendar here, just a couple of things coming up. Next Sunday, that'll be Father's Day, so happy Father's Day early ahead for everybody out there, all you dads. I'm going to be preaching at Crossway Baptist Church. That's June 21st. That'll be at 11 o'clock for the service there. It's in Gay City, Virginia. Then on June 28th, we're going to be at First Baptist Church in Norton. Again, that's in Norton, Virginia. Service there will start at 11 a.m. as well. July the 5th, going to be back over with our good friends at Puthers Chapel. They're in Clintwood, Virginia. We're excited to be back with them. That'll start at 11 o'clock as well on July the 5th. On July the 12th, we're going to be back at the First Baptist Church of Norton there for them. Again, 11 o'clock for that service. July 19th, that's our third Wednesday, so we'll be at Crossway Baptist Church again at 11 o'clock there in Gay City. And on July 26th, we're going to be rounding it back out at Roadside Baptist Church. That is just outside the Gay City area there, between there and Nicholsville, in a little community called Snowflake. Again, that's Roadside Baptist. We'll start at 10 o'clock with the teaching, and then at 11 o'clock with the worship service and the preaching to follow. So that gets us through the month of June and July and things ahead for August. So we're excited about everything coming our way for all of our ministry here at Deeply Rooted. Again, we want to thank our good buddy Ryan Vanover and all the people at the Wise County Sheriff's Office. Thank you guys so much. Ryan, we appreciate having you on today, buddy.
I was glad to be here, man. It's always a joy to hang out with you, and it's always good times to talk about the Lord with you. So I appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you, man. Good time, good friendship. Looking forward to what the Lord has in store for us. So until next time, guys, thank you so much. Hope you have a tremendous week in Jesus.